I'm Scott Miller. I'm one of the two directors for the Mississippi River Paddle Weekend. And I guess what I'll say, I live in Minneapolis, just a few blocks from the Mississippi River. And the whole point of this for me is the 150 miles that this event happens on is just a particularly gorgeous and, in my mind, an underappreciated stretch of the river. There's no barges, and everybody in Minnesota is all about the 10,000 lakes, and the lakes are beautiful, but the river is so stunning and overlooked, and it's an underappreciated resource. And so we're just thrilled to be able to get. Last year we had 200 people we put on the river through the different events as part of this weekend, and so hopefully some of you will get to come and experience the beautiful Mississippi in Minnesota. So yeah, I'm Scott, and take it away, Todd.
And I'm Todd. Scott got jealous of my Hawaiian shirt last year, so he said we had to get matching shirts for this year. So that's exciting, and hats, I guess, as well. I grew up on the Sauk River in St. Cloud, Minnesota. I'm currently living in Florida, just transferred down here for a new job. But I love the logistics behind putting on events like this and getting people out to paddle the river. I was just talking with Michael, who we'll introduce here in a second too. And for me, getting people on the river gets people to care about the river, and water quality is a big passion project of mine. And so it's neat to put over 200 people and maybe 400 people this year. I think that's a great goal if we get 400 people to do our races. So.
Yes, and then we want to have a big thank you to one of our event sponsors and the host for this event, the Mississippi River Network, aka onemississippi.org. We've worked with them a lot over the last few years, and they're kind of the only / premier organization thinking about the entire river and kind of coordinating amongst different stakeholders and groups and organizations and people throughout all 10 states along the Mississippi and the 2,000 miles, really. And I'll just put a plug in before Michael talks. For becoming a river citizen, you get a curated dispatch from them in your email inbox every couple months with just all kinds of really good information about the river and what we can do to think well about this incredible resource that we have. And Michael, why don't you go ahead and say a few words about One Mississippi now too? And thank you so much for hosting us with your company's or your nonprofit's Zoom account. We appreciate it.
Oh yeah, you bet. Absolutely. It's nice to see. I remember meeting a few folks at last year's paddle event. Bobby, is good to see. Mark, I've seen you on the paddler pages over the last few years. I'm a paddler. I've ran the river down Headwaters region to Louisiana. Did not quite make it to the Gulf, but that's a story when we have more time. I'm based here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. On the screen here, this just gives you a sense of our river citizen community, which I'll talk more about just here in a second. One step backward is this Mississippi River Network, right? This is a coalition of over 60 organizations and businesses from Headwaters to Gulf working together to help protect the Mississippi River, the people, land, water, and wildlife. Our public program is called One Mississippi, in which we built a constituency of over 20,000 people, these river citizens, right? Everyday people from armchairs to wading boots that the river can count on. So definitely invite you all. Scott, thanks for that plug. That was fantastic. Appreciate it. Join our community, right? And with same thing with this community, it's pretty resemblant of the river itself in that we only reach become the mighty Mississippi from all of these tributaries flowing in, right? And so we really feel the same way in how we organize for the river. We're only as strong as all of our members, right? All of these tributaries coming in. So please, please, please join the community, get involved. I'll share a link here in the chat just a second. We put on a lot of cool things like River Days of Action. We're back again. This brought together thousands of people from Headwaters to Gulf for events during June. We're back at it again, and I'm so thrilled that it overlaps with the Mississippi River Paddle Weekend. Again, I fully intend on being at Coon Rapids Dam or wherever we are again for the paddle weekend at the paddle party, right, Scott and Todd? the celebration.
That's right,
at
the
the end.
post-paddle party. Yeah.
Post paddle party. There it is. So, anyways, pleasure to be on with you all. It's been a delight working with Scott and Todd and their crew over the years. I can't recommend this event enough. So I hope everyone asked your questions, and we'll look forward to seeing you in June.
So we just submitted a few more people. Just a reminder that we are recording. So if you don't want your image on the video, just turn off your video. And thanks for being here. We're going to do a slideshow now for about 10 or 15 minutes, a little info presentation. And then we do have quite a few alumni from this MR1. Last year it was the 140. This year it's the 150. But we have quite a few alumni, and they'll be helping to answer questions and sharing some of their stories from the races. So we should have a pretty action-packed hour here, and lots of times for questions and answers too, Q&A. Let's see, and please feel free to put comments and questions in the chat at any time. And I'm going to try to share my screen here. Let's see. Okay. So Todd and I started a business. We're best friends, and this is our passion project. And our friendship hinges on having a fun and interesting project that we can obsess over at all times and talk at great length and in great detail. And if you go to our rules page, you will see the unfortunate result of that, which is we probably have too many rules. But you can't fault us for having a lack of information or organization. And this is our greatest creation so far is the Mississippi River Paddle Weekend. We're really having a ton of fun with this, and we just love the Mississippi River, and we just want to share it with as many people as possible. The Mississippi River Paddle Weekend, races, tours, music, and food. And I won't tell the other Zoom we just had with all the other events but I'll tell you guys the premier event is the MR150. So there's a whole bunch of tours and races, but the MR150 is the big one. It's the big one. And I see I'm getting way off. Okay, so I think we have Brooke and Tom and Bobby and Mark on with us. And when we get a little further in, we'll find out who else, because I think there's probably more. But these are all distinguished alumni who came to our inaugural year, and many of them are coming back for year two. And of course, Bobby holds the world record for fastest canoe trip down the entire Mississippi, as well as has participated in a ton of ultra endurance events. So we do see ourselves, the MR150, as part of the ultra paddling community, and I've just become part of this community in the last 4 or 5 years, and it's so cool how Texas has their unique paddling community developed around the Texas Water Safari. Florida has their unique paddle community developed around the Water Tribe, the Everglades Challenge, and all the other amazing and crazy events they have in Florida. Of course, the traditional Au Sable Canoe Marathon. Michigan has a storied racing career. In Canada, Quebec has, Missouri now with the Missouri River 340, unbelievable. The 340 is my biggest personal inspiration for the paddle weekend. So we're trying to create, like these other states have, a unique and fun canoe, kayak, racing and touring river paddling community here in Minnesota, and we're certainly off to a good start. So Mississippi River Paddle Weekend has a bunch of events. We talked about all the other ones at a Zoom that just happened an hour and a half ago, and now we're going to focus in on the 150. And I'm supposed to be going back and forth with Todd, and I'm doing a terrible job. Take it away, Frosty.
It's all good. It's all good. We just really want to thank the Minnesota Canoeing Association. They've stepped up this year. And our community growth sponsor allows us to buy a bunch of infrastructure to really take these races to the next level. I think Scotty's going to share a picture later of my favorite purchase so far. I'm not going to tell you what it is until we get to that slide, though. But thanks to the Minnesota Canoe Association.
Yeah, and then this is just kind of an overview map for all of the events that make up the paddle weekend. Again, the 150 starts in Brainerd and comes down through Little Falls, through Sartell, St. Cloud, through Clearwater, where the 48-mile paddlers join, and then the 25 paddlers join. Everybody has to get to the Coon Rapids Dam, by 5 p.m. on Sunday. So the MR150 starts at 3 p.m., on Friday, you have 50 hours to go 150 miles. And then we have a big party at the Coon Rapids Dam. So pretty fun.
So last year we put over 200 people on the water, and collectively they paddled over 11,000 miles in all the different events. You can see we had 60 for the 140. For the 48, we had 24 people. For the 48 relay, we had two teams, a team of 8 and a team of 4. 30 people paddled the 25. 28 people paddled the 10 mile, and then we had 53 people that paddled in our recreational tour. Paddlers came from 18 states and Canada. And the next statistic is my favorite. The youngest paddler was 8 years old and paddled the tandem kayak with his dad in the tour. And the oldest was 79 and was part of the team that won the MR25. And then also, like, we couldn't do this without our volunteers. And last year we had over 90 volunteers give over 700 hours to make this weekend a reality. How do you get? No, I'm taking this one. So this is our new inflatable archway. Everybody who finishes the race this year will get to paddle underneath that. And this is the river in the background. There's the Sauk River in my backyard. So we're pretty excited about this.
So a couple things. Even though this is an ultra endurance event, much like the Missouri River 340, I was inspired to try to create an event that's pretty open and welcoming to paddlers of all abilities. Now, not everybody can paddle 150 miles. You have to work up to it, certainly, but it's not kind of like a marathon. You have to train for it. I think this is actually, at least for me, this is easier for me than running a marathon, and I think I'm not the only one. It's nice to sit down and have the current push you. That said, we did have 2 people do it on stand-up paddle boards last year. But anyway, we're trying to make it a big tent event, open to lots of different kinds of people. And part of that is that you can paddle whatever you want. So last year we had surf skis, we had canoes, we had tandem canoes, racing canoes, regular canoes. We had an aluminum canoe. We had stand-up paddle boards. We haven't had anybody do it in a pedal drive yet, but that's an option. And of course, we had kayaks as well. So and also we try to put an emphasis on finishing. So we try to have a really nice finisher medal. Everybody gets a t-shirt, finishers get a finisher medal. And then we have quite a few different divisions, and we give a trophy to everybody, top 3 in each division. So I think almost half the field got a trophy last year. And that's just to try to make everybody feel like they have a shot at setting a goal and achieving it.
Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, yeah. So the other thing is how underappreciated the Mississippi River is. I think I talked about that already, but it is a really beautiful stretch. About 100 islands in the river, no barges. There is pleasure craft, but not a ton of them, and not generally at night. So it's a pretty wilderness experience. The shore is generally not very developed, except for right when you're in a couple towns. So it's a very, very pretty. Last year, a bear swam in front of somebody's kayak. So there is a real wilderness feel. This is just one image from this stretch from the world record attempt that I was part of 2 years ago. And then shout out to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, because we have excellent maps for this whole stretch that show all the takeout points. You can get these for free by going to the Minnesota DNR website. We have a link on our website in the Paddler's Guide for the MR150. We will also hand these out at the event, but it's great if you can get them beforehand. And you can even download the map onto your phone or device, and it's called a GeoPDF. You open up the map on your device, it will show you your real-time location on the river. So the DNR has just done an outstanding job with those maps. I guess I'm supposed to show you the Google map now. I don't know if I'm going to be capable of that. Let's see. Well, that seems hard. We'll come back to that. Okay, go ahead, Frosty.
Well, I think we should address the elephant in the room. Why is it the 150 this year, not the 140 like last year? And so we've added 10 miles to the race this year, and the first 5 miles of that you'll be actually paddling upstream. So instead of leaving from Lum Park and heading straight over to the first dam, the first portage, you're going to paddle 5 miles upstream and turn around. We did that for a couple of reasons. We wanted to solidify the race course so that it's it's standard from year to year. And so even though we're changing it from year 1 to year 2, we hope this will allow for the expected growth that we have of this race. And we just thought it was too short of a time period from the start to the dam, that first dam where everybody might get backed up. They got backed up a little bit this year, but as we grow, we think that that has the potential to get worse and worse. So this year we added the 10 miles to try to spread people out. So it's going to start at 3 p.m. this year instead of at 5 p.m. The same starting point at Lum Park in Brainerd. There's over 2 miles of portaging on 6 portage. We have listed here that the Sauk Rapids are a class 1 to 2, but there will be a mandated partial portage of the upper portion of that rapid. And then there'll be an alternative. If you want to portage the entire rapid, you can do that as well. But otherwise, you are going to be allowed to be put in below the upper half. And then the wild and scenic Beaver Islands are just a very cool aspect of the river just below the St. Cloud Dam.
And I just want to add, I think, well, anyway, for the first 10 miles where you actually go upstream the first 5 miles, there's almost no current. It's like a lake above the dam. So it's not like you're going to be struggling to go upstream. It's just like 10 miles of flat water to start the race, basically, to spread people out before that first portage. So the divisions in this race, we have solo men and women, stand-up paddleboard men and women, tandem men, women, and mixed. You can also do a team. And then new this year, we are offering a tour, and there's some special rules for the tour. This is for people who really want to enjoy and relax and take it easy and camp and sleep and not be competitive. So you're challenging yourself to still do it in 50 hours, and you have to meet the same cutoff times as the people in the race. But you can skip the first 10 miles, and you can actually get help on the portages from a support crew. There's even a couple portages you could use a vehicle if you want to put your stuff in a car and go to the end. You could do that. So it just gives you more freedom to just relax and not be as competitive.
So Scott, we have a question about the Sauk Rapids. Can you clarify the required takeout section of the Sauk Rapids? And then Mark, is basically the same question. Is it the same as last year?
Yeah, I think I've got some slides on that. I don't remember, but I'll just talk about it briefly now. It is right now, the plan is to have the same takeout as last year. However, we may change that because we have a hot tip that there's actually a really good takeout about another mile downstream. So still above the rapids, but closer. So right now, the takeout that everybody used last year, it's a 1.2 mile portage to the main rapid and the put in that's right below the main drop where most people put in last year. If this other takeout is real, it will cut that portage in half. So instead of being 1.2 miles, it'll be 0.6. And last year, what we said was that it was going to be a mandatory portage around the main drop if the water was really high, which it was. So it was a mandatory portage. The change this year is it's going to be a mandatory portage regardless of water level. And we did that basically for safety reasons. And if people have questions about that, we can get into the details. But for now, I'm just going to say for safety reasons, it's a mandatory portage. The takeout right now is the same as last year. We might make it a little closer, but you will still be allowed to put in where most people put in last year below the main drop. But there is the option, which some people did last year, to portage yet another 1.2 miles to avoid the entire rapid if you want to. And I can show you guys some of that stuff on the Google map in a little bit too. So just a couple pictures. This is at Lum Park at the start of the event. You can see it is really a lake above the dam here. Really pretty. This is the start right off the beach. We have an on the water start. You can see Rod Price. You can see Bobby there. You can see, I think that's Andy. I don't know. I can't even say all, but it's a really beautiful park, beautiful pine trees, just a nice, serene, easy place to start a race. There's Bobby. There's Rod. There's Ryan. And it is a beautiful stretch. Like I was saying, there's like 100 miles. There's pretty swift current, especially when the water's high like it was last year. Although there is about 25 miles of flat water paddling as well above the dams. you have 50 hours to finish. And like we said, we had about 60 people in the race last year.
This
Go
is
ahead,
just a
Todd.
picture of that picture of the first portage at the Brainerd Dam. And you can even see in this picture, it's not real wide. So only 2 or 3 people can kind of take out at a time. And so again, that's one of the reasons why we've added that 10 miles at the start, so that we can spread people out a little bit.
And one of the things that's fun about this race is having all the different kinds of boats. And in this picture, you see people with pretty traditional boundary waters canoes. These are pretty common in the state of Minnesota. And we're really happy that we had a lot of the traditional canoes come and do this race. But then we're also happy that we have the surf skis and the kayaks. And it's just fun to have that kind of diversity. This is a picture of the second portage. So that was the Brainerd Dam. This is at the Little Falls Dam. This is at the takeout here. You can see the people have the race numbers on their boat, the required race numbers. You can see the red light glowing there in their canoe. That's probably from a red light headlamp that they have. Red light is really good because it doesn't hurt your night vision at all. And
so what
this,
we have a question that says, are most of the portages in eddies or current?
it's a mixture. Most of the takeouts are in flat water because the flat water lake's above the dam. So the takeouts above the dams are pretty easy. The put-ins can be a little squirrely, and we'll hear from some people last year that experienced that, particularly below the Little Falls Dam and then again below Blanchard. There's definitely some eddies and currents there that can be a little tricky. I think if you can stop and scout those the day before the race or on your way up, even on Friday, a lot of people found that helpful. Yeah, so I don't want to pretend like the put-ins aren't a little challenging. I think the water was so high last year, they were especially challenging. I don't think they'll always be quite that difficult, but most people managed them fine. I think 1 or 2 people did flip over, but then they were able to recover pretty quickly. This is an image of the Blanchard Dam. This is the third portage. This is I think the biggest drop on the whole river is this dam. I think so. And so some of the portages are on city streets and sidewalks. This is the most wildernessy type area here. This is the Blanchard Dam portage. And this is where most people, if they are going to sleep at all the first night, they'll take a snooze here for an hour or 2 or 3 or 4, depending on their race goals. And then also most people's support crew camped here and slept here. And we have an agreement with the people that own this property, the people that own the dam, the power company, to use this. It's a lovely spot. So we'll talk more about that, but it's a great option for support crew to camp out at the first night. And this portage goes through a forest on a single track, up and down hilly trail. So this is one of the more challenging portages here, but you can use portage wheels in this race, which help.
And what's nice about all the portages, except for the Brainerd portage, is that support crews are able to meet you, and they're allowed to transport your portage wheels for you. You don't have to keep them on your boat, except for the first portage, but we are working to maybe change that. But as of right now, they're not allowed to come to the first portage, but all the other portages, they are.
The land surrounding the Mississippi in this stretch tends to be farm fields and then in places developed, but you can't tell that when you're on the river. You're in a ribbon of wilderness. So this is a shot from the Blanchard Dam looking downstream, and you can see this is, we're going to have more leaves on the trees than here, but it does feel pretty wildernessy. It's pretty nice. This is a shot of the lower part of the Sauk Rapids here. Now this might even be part of the main drop. So the put-in where people will be going in our race is off to the left here. So like we said, changes from last year, mandatory portage at the rapids, added 10 miles. Last year, because of the high water, we actually had to end 5 miles upstream from Coon Rapids Dam. That was a freak event. I see my camera just froze. But you can still, well, it doesn't matter because, okay, you can still hear me. Anyway, that was a very unusual occurrence that the finish line had to be moved upstream. We don't anticipate that will happen again. So when you see the finish times from last year, remember that the water was really fast and high, and that we added 10 miles this year at the start, and that also we cut 5 miles last year. So we do expect people to take more time this year. Jim and Patrick, who won last year in 16 hours, 18 minutes, that time will be very hard to beat going forward. The average finish time last year was around 25 hours. I expect that to be higher as well. But the last team came in at 42 hours and 3 minutes. So depending on how much you sleep and what your strategy is, the discrepancy between 16 hours and 42 hours is pretty significant. I know one guy kind of bonked. He kind of ran out of juice, ran out of energy on Saturday, and he was going to quit. And we told him, don't quit, just go home and relax and take it easy. And he went and had a good night's sleep and then was really happy to come back and finish on Sunday morning.
So portage and cutoff info, it's 10 miles to the Brainerd Dam, 39 miles to the Little Falls Dam, and it's got a 7 a.m. Saturday morning cutoff. 9 miles past that is the Blanchard Dam. It's got a 10 a.m. Saturday cutoff. 24 miles past that is the Sartell Dam. It's got a 4 p.m. Saturday cutoff. And then it's 1 mile to the Sauk Rapids. After the Sauk Rapids, it's 2 miles to the St. Cloud Dam, and that has a 7 p.m. Saturday cutoff. And then the last cutoff is 35 miles past that at Norin Landing and Otsego, and that has a 9 a.m. Cutoff time on Sunday. So what does the cutoff time mean? If you don't make it to that spot by that time, you're no longer officially in the race. If you want to continue on your own, outside of the parameters of our safety crews and our organization, that's fine. It's a free river, but that is the official cutoff time to still enjoy all of that support.
And couple more thoughts about the portages. So if you are going to rest at all the first night, again, most people do that at Blanchard Dam. That's kind of the recommendation. Although it's not to say when you're portaging at Little Falls, you certainly can meet up with your crew there and take a little break. You've got 39 miles between Brainerd and Little Falls. There are places you can meet your crew there, and there's information about all that on the website. But then most people are going to get to the Sauk Rapids during the day, Saturday morning. I know last year the water was so high, people got there earlier, but I don't think too many people will get there before 6 a.m. Going forward. And that means that once you're past that St. Cloud Dam, I think then 35 miles to Norin Landing. That's not a portage. And then it's 25 miles, I think, from there to the end. So you've got 60 miles. And there's, last year a group even camped on an island in that stretch the second night. So if you wanted to get some sleep the second night, there's lots of places to do that, including Norin Landing. Okay. Let's see. So again, portage wheels are not required, but they are recommended. You can carry them in your boat, or you can have your support crew meet you with them. And then once you get to a portage, the support crew can help get your boat out of the water and away from the takeout to clear space for other people. We don't want you to just leave your boat in the way, but they can't move your boat on the portage. You have to do that. You, the racers. They can resupply you anytime, and they can even carry gear for you, extra gear and extra water and food. But the required gear list, that stuff that's in your boat with you the whole time, that you have to portage that.
So there is a shuttle available that is going to leave Coon Rapids in the morning on Friday. So if you do need that will be available. Like Scott mentioned, you'll have to come up with a sleep strategy, and I'm sure our alumni can talk about that a little bit. But Blanchard Dam, again, is a great place. Support crew. Everybody is required to have a support crew, but it can be in person or it can be virtual. But somebody needs to be available to come get you within 2.5 hours of the race. Of course, we're going to have safety crews and we're going to help out, make sure people are safe. But if you're safe, but you're just out of the race, somebody's going to have to come pick you up. So even if you have a virtual support crew, you'll have to secure somebody, and it can be a different crew. We can help put out the word for that. I know we're doing that for somebody already. But you do need to get that solidified. And I'll let Scott talk about the nutrition and hydration.
Well, just one more thing about the support crew too. In-person is recommended because they can carry extra food and water and clothing for you and resupply you and provide morale. They can meet you at the portages. There's lots of reasons, but we recognize that not everybody can have an in-person support crew. So the job of the virtual support crew is to monitor on Race Owl, which we'll talk about that, and to be available if we need to call somebody. If we can't get a hold of you, we'll call your support person. They can kind of be a liaison, a representative for you. So you could have a virtual support crew that's stationed in Iowa or Florida or anywhere in the United States that's monitoring your whereabouts. But if they're not within 2.5 hours, you'd have to have somebody else within 2.5 hours that would come get you. One thing we recommend is using our Mississippi River Paddle Weekend Facebook community group. You can often find people who'd be willing to do that for you if you post in there, or if you email us, we can help find somebody. And then, like Todd said, our alumni will help talk about this, but in a race like this, an event like this, where a lot of people are just trying to finish because it's an epic adventure, it's easy to make a mistake when it comes to nutrition or hydration or really getting too cold too. So we'll talk more about that. But in general, you want to eat something and eat and drink something every hour, and just you want to start the race with a belly full of calories, and you want to be well hydrated at the beginning of the race. And then you just try to keep your hydration and your nutrition tank full. Don't let your caloric deficit get too low. Don't let the water volume in your body get too low. Just if you start drinking a bunch of water and then you just keep sipping throughout the race, or whatever your hydration is, it's a good strategy.
I'm looking something up, Scott. So if you want to take over, that'd be great.
Well, I know we've got these people and they're going to talk more about this, but some pro tips from some of our experienced paddlers. Brooke mentioned it's helpful to scout the portages beforehand. Tom mentioned that doing everything you can in the boat helps. So if you have a way to go to the bathroom, at least urinating in the boat, that's very helpful. There's devices to make that easier for women, and there's other options for men too. It's just easier to eat, to drink, to go to the bathroom in the boat because the current will keep pushing you downstream. Every time you go to shore, that's when you're really, really losing time. That being said, some people are going to do this event and decide they want to sleep 4 or 5 hours both nights, which is completely fine. And it's very possible to finish within the allotted time and still sleep some both nights. Other people who are being more competitive might decide they're not going to sleep at all. Certainly the top 5, 6, 10 teams last year, they definitely didn't sleep at all. Tom said it's good to try practicing paddling at night. I would agree with that. And then the red light on your headlight is a good tip to keep your night vision in. Let's see.
Are you required to have red and green lights on the boat like they do in the 340 for this race?
Great question. So this is new for 2022 as well. Our lighting rules have changed. So you can find this information again on the website, but our rules are different because we don't have barges and stuff and we don't have any state laws. Well, we do have some state laws, but they're different than in Missouri. So we require you to carry a flashlight or a spotlight of some kind that you can turn on in the event that you need it. For example, you hear a motorboat coming, or you need to see something that's in the way, or you just need a light for whatever reason. That can be mounted on your boat, or it can just be something you grab that's tethered in and turn on or turn off. So there's 2 lights we require. One is a flashlight or spotlight that you can turn off as needed. And then new this year, we require a stern light of some kind. This could even be a chemical light that's just taped on the back of your life jacket or in the pocket on the back of your life jacket or taped on the back of your canoe. It can be a battery powered light. We don't care what color it is. We just think that for safety reasons, for paddlers paddling behind you to be able to see where you are and know where other paddlers are is going to add to the overall safety of the event. So you do have to have some kind of a stern light on at all times at night. Great question. Okay, I want to make sure we have enough time for questions and answers. So I'm going to burn through all this as quickly as I can. You do have to have a race number on your boat. You can get mailbox stickers just about anywhere on Amazon. There is an app called the Mississippi River Pro Paddler app that will show you where you are, and it will count you down to each ramp. and it will tell you where the middle of the channel is. It's not 100% accurate, but at night it can be nice to keep you in the middle of the river where the fast water is. And I just talked about those lights there. Here's two people wearing their shirts. Everybody gets a paddle weekend shirt. Every finisher gets a medal like that. And then yeah, and then everybody top three in each division gets a trophy. Here we've got some guys in the surf ski. Ozzy did the 140 last year and the 48. Here's our winners last year from the St. Charles Canoe Club, Patrick and Jim. I think Jim is with us tonight, so pretty cool. Those guys went real fast down the river. We do use Race Owl, which is an app that tracks you at all times. So you have to have a charged cell phone, try to keep it dry, put it in a dry bag or a plastic bag, and have it with you and have the Race Owl app running. And there's information for how to do that on the website as well in the Paddler's Guide. And then at the end, we have a post-paddle party with food and music on Sunday. So if you finish on Saturday, you can come back and join us on Sunday. We would love that. It's a real fun time at the Coon Rapids Dam. Todd, anything else?
We have a question on water temps of the Mississippi. I couldn't find anything. I was just curious if you know.
Yeah, I can't ever remember. In early June, where this happens in June 9th, I think the average temperature is in the high temperature during the day is in the 70s, but it can get down to in the 30s or 40s at night. Usually not in the 30s. Usually, I think last year was like in the 50s, maybe even warmer than that. But you do need to be prepared for a range of temps, air temps. And I think the water, I don't think it's usually frigid, but it's certainly not warm either. So you are required to wear a life jacket at all times, and you do need to be ready for a capsize. It is possible to capsize. It doesn't matter how good you are. There's places where there's a little rock or a little stick or a little eddy, and certainly at night it's easy. So you want to have stuff tethered and in dry bags, and you yourself want to have a set of dry clothing in a dry bag so that if you were to capsize, you could go to shore and put on dry, warm clothes. So that even if it is, heaven forbid, it's 49 degrees, right, with a 10-mile-an-hour wind and some chilly water, in order to be safe, it's very important you have a set of dry clothing with you, warm extra layers, including a winter hat that you can switch into in the event of a capsize.
And then we have the question in the chat as well. Can they wear a mock or Vycobi PFD? I also posted in the chat, you can wear those, but you're still required to have the U.S. Coast Guard approved PFD in your boat. But I did post the actual rule in the chat if you're curious about other PFDs.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn off the slideshow so we can talk again here and see our faces more. But just real quick, this is the Coon Rapids Dam. At the end, it's really cool because you can walk across it, so that's a fun activity when the race is done. This is showing a lot of the winners of the different events last year on stage, and rules and paddler guides for each event are for the MR150 are on the website. You can register there. We encourage you to register sooner is better. Info on volunteering, and then our Facebook page is a great place for a lot of updates as well. Okay, let me stop the sharing. Okay, so let's see. Tom, can you go ahead and just share your race story briefly with everybody?
Sure. Mine was fairly typical, I think. I've done a lot of ultra distance events, but this is the first time I tried doing one in a canoe. So that was a kind of a new experience for me. And it was much more manageable than I thought it was going to be. I finished in, I think, 28 or 29 hours, so I had plenty of time to spare. The things I would say is practice your portage routine. The portage should be an opportunity to stretch your legs and relax a little bit. But they're kind of unique to this event. And, I did see some people who kind of had gear everywhere at the put in and take out of the portages. They were spending a lot of time messing around with things. So I think a good routine for that helps a lot. The food and drink, boy, don't underestimate how bad it is to fall behind on your nutrition. It's hard to catch back up if you get dehydrated. But in general, it was a great event. And I would say the people are amazing. for almost all of us, it's more of an event than it is a race. So, I wouldn't come thinking that people are going to be super competitive and they're not going to want to answer your questions and they're not going to want to talk to you. Everybody answered every question I had. They were super friendly and welcoming, and I never felt like I was asking a silly question. So I jump right in and ask questions. And I would echo that the river's amazing. Not many people have the opportunity to experience it in as much depth as we will. You'll be there day and night, and we had rain and sun and everything in between, and it's certainly something worth seeing. The paddling really was fantastic, and for me, one of the highlights of the whole event was night paddling. I learned that you can actually navigate around some of the rocks and chutes in the river with your hearing. You can hear them coming. You can kind of tell which side of the river they're on, and paddling in the dark was sort of a peaceful, interesting experience. I'm looking forward to it again this year. And the last thing I would say is it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Part of it's going to be awful, and you just kind of have to embrace the suck and power through. But that's what makes it such a cool event, is you get to the finish and you know that you've done something that not many people have, and it's the struggle was worthwhile. So a strong recommend. I'm coming back again this year.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to have some other people tell their stories as well, but first I want to address Dan's question. It's a good question, Dan. So the ground crew, they can meet you at the portage. They can help you get your boat out of the water. They just can't portage the boat, down the portage path. They can help move it within 100 feet to the takeout just to help get it out of the way. But after that, it's your job to do the portage. Again, you can use portage wheels. And they can carry like extra clothing for you or extra food or water. That's fine. And they can walk with you on the portage. That's fine. They just can't move your boat, and they can't, all of your required gear that's in the boat you have to portage that. Either leave it in the boat or put it in the pack and carry it. Can they stabilize the boat when you're getting in or out? Great question. Yes, absolutely they can. 100%. That's completely fine. Great question.
And I will just note as well that for if anybody chooses to do the 140 tour, like Scott mentioned earlier, all those rules are relaxed. They can help you completely on the portages. It's just for the 150 race divisions that these rules apply.
I would add that I did it unsupported last year, and at every portage there was somebody there who could grab the canoe as you're coming in, and there's always people there at any time of the day or night to steady the canoe and help you get in and out.
And I will say too, the portages, they all have a blinky red light to help you find them at night. Some of them are around a little bit of a corner, so you can get kind of nervous, like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Okay, finally, there it is. And we are going to try to put some buoys out with lights this year so that it's a little less anxiety inducing as to where is it, especially on some of the more hidden ones. And they are above dams. And so, of course, there can be some anxiety, like, am I about to go over the dam? But the dams all have, well, usually.
Don't say that.
Usually they have buoys in a line across. So you'd know if you were going too far when you get to the buoy line. And we'll talk about that before the race at the race meeting if we're aware of any that for some reason don't have that. But often the portages are pretty close to that buoy line. So you just want to, you'll see the dam, you'll see the lights on the dam, and you sometimes you have to get kind of close. But that's where having that app, the Pro Paddler app, can help. But like I said, we will have the blinky red lights again, and we'll try it this year to add in certain spots some buoys as well to help you guide you into the takeout zone. Let's see, Mark, you want to tell us a little bit about your race story from last year?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm a MR340 veteran. So this was a race I wanted to do. Being in the Mississippi, way up north, is a totally different river than what we have down near St. Louis here. The challenge for me, the long drive up, got there the night before, and then I tried to sleep as late as possible on race day itself, but certainly I was up early, like thinking about logistics and nervous and whatnot. So, it's late as you can sleep the day of the race. It's a little bit earlier start this year, so that's something to keep in mind. We were also able to drive to a couple of the portages on the way to the start and do a little scouting research that really helped. I had never seen that stretch of the river before. And then coming through the portages at night, certainly it helped have that knowledge, although it looked quite a bit different at night. I'm happy to hear about the out and back to start. It got really crowded at the first portage. I actually dumped my boat and got wet to start my race off, but quickly dried off. I didn't use the Pro Paddler app. There were parts I wish I did. There were a few stretches early on in the race where I was going in and out of islands and then watching people pass me who had stayed in the channel. So that's something to keep in mind. I tagged along with Brooke and Brad a few times, and they knew where they were going. So I even took a wrong turn, and Brad had to call me back and say, "Hey, man, that's a dead end down there." But yeah, the portages, I really like breaking up the monotony of paddling. You got to outstretch your legs, stretch your arms, and once you got back in the boat, you're ready to paddle for more hours. So, yeah, I love it. That's why I'm happy to come back again. I'm bringing up a few more people from St. Louis this time, so happy to help it grow.
That's awesome. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you guys keeping these stories a little shorter because we're running out of time and we have so many fun and interesting people with us on here. So let's see, Brooke, can we hear your race story?
Well, before that, Scott, there's a question in the chat. Is there a GPX track for the channel?
Oh, right. So I don't believe so, although the Pro Paddler app is your best bet. Now, that app has a line that we think is pretty good, and generally it's pretty good, but it's not perfect. If that line puts you to the right, if you're in a group of 10 islands, it's not necessarily going to show you the very best track. So, but in general, it is pretty good and pretty helpful. I know there's GPX tracks for the center of the channel often, like on the Missouri River and stuff, and even further south on the Mississippi. That's because those have a designated channel for the barges. But because we're above the commercial traffic area for this race, there's no designated center of channel. There's no buoys, there's no barges, there's no dredged channel, none of that. So you're on a more of a wilderness river. I mean, yes, there's dams, but so I can't recommend that Pro Paddler app enough. But I know people successfully negotiated the course without that too. So.
And then just to make sure everybody sees it, well, I just lost the name, but there's a great recap from the race last year from Mark. He put the link in the chat, so check that out as well.
Yeah, and Andy's saying he made his own GPX track on Google Earth Pro, which was reassuring. I'm sure that was great. That's going to be very similar to what you'd find on the Pro Paddler app. So, okay, yeah. So we got a couple more people to get to here. Brooke, take it away.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this race. It may have been my favorite one from last year. It's beautiful. It's fun, and there's a lot of wonderful things. I want to say a couple things that that I think would be helpful, maybe that I didn't realize is one. Yes, look at the portages because it's not the same as what you have in Oklahoma and Missouri and Texas. That they're different, very, very different. And I think if the first time I saw the put in at Blanchard Dam was at 1 o'clock in the morning when the waves were beating the heck out of me, I would have just laid down and cried. But having done it twice the day before, I've had a whole lot better going, okay, no, I got this. I go between the trees and here's how this is going to work. And I strongly recommend that. Also, something that I had never used before was the bilge pump that's in my kayak. That was the only time I ever needed it, and that was from waves coming in at that portage as I was trying to get in. And there may be people that don't always have one because you get used to not always needing it, and you want it there. The other thing is, we may have not been a recommended place to sleep, but when I was cold and wet and my phone decided it no longer wanted to have GPS and my map was telling me I was 10 miles from where I was, I slept at the county park boat ramp because I couldn't see any point in moving forward if I was going the wrong direction. And it worked pretty well. And I get cold faster than anybody I know, and I didn't die. I didn't freeze to death, so it's not that awful. But it was good. I enjoyed it. I can't wait to come back. I will be slower this year because I'm rehabbing from shoulder surgery, and I can't seem to get good traction on training at all. But but I intend to do it. It just may be a lot slower this year.
Well, that's great, Brooke, and that's one of the things I love is that everybody's going to set their own goal, you know, and it's going to be what's appropriate for you, and that's it's about having the best experience and enjoying the river in whatever way you can. So that's just awesome, and yeah, yeah, thank you so much. Those are great. The bilge pump, that's the kind of insider intel that's really useful. I know the Blanchard Dam there does have big waves below the dam. Partly that was because the water was so high. And again, we don't know what conditions will be like this year. So, you know, I don't think the waves will be any bigger than last year unless somehow the water's even higher, you know, so it's just, you know, conditions will be different every year and you have to be ready for that. Absolutely. Mr. Bobby Johnson, would you mind telling us your race story?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Pretty
Yep.
good. There's a little bit of an echo, but pretty good.
Okay. First of all, Scott, Todd, congrats on your second year. It was a wonderful race last year, and I'm sure it's going to be fantastic this year. I will not be there, but I wish I could. The Mississippi River, and I've got quite a bit of history on that river now. The main reason I wanted to come back is because I've already been on that river once, and then Scott told me to put on a race, and I figured if Scott's going to do a race, it's going to be a good one. And they did not disappoint. From start to finish, they just everything that they told us was going to happen happened. Everything went very smoothly. I love going to these type of races because the people, the paddlers are just absolutely fantastic people. It's a great community to be in. The beauty of this race, for me, and I think for a lot of very competitive people out there, is that it's very fast paced. Trying to chase down Jim and Patrick the entire time, turn all the portages, the speed of the river, not knowing what's kind of coming up, even though I've been on the river before, but I slept up there in a lot of that section when I was in the canoe on the record attempts. But it's fast, 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 and it's fun. It's just a great race to do. The river is beautiful, the scenery, the people in Minnesota are fantastic. And then you get the party at the end. And they put on a great party. I was impressed. Beautiful park. Hopefully you guys get the same great weather as you did last year. And Jim,
Yeah,
thanks for helping me get a fast time on the river.
yeah. Thank you so much, Bobby, and shout out to you. Bobby was our first solo boat finisher, second overall. So quite a performance, and I know it was fun watching you guys in the front there duke it out with each other. So yeah, thanks so much for coming up all the way from Florida and bringing Ryan and Rod with you. It was so fun to have people from all over the nation. I think you guys were probably some of the people that came the furthest. So
You had the long drive. It was worth it, though. It was worth it.
Absolutely. Well, I think those are the people that had said they could talk ahead of time. Keep asking your questions in the chat, but I know we do have a few more alumni on here that we could hear from. Brandon's asking any cell signal issues on the course. That's a great question, Brandon. We are very lucky that, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have John Marble, the founder of Race Owl, I believe is on with us, and all the other race alumni. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe by and large, everybody was pretty well connected throughout the entire race with their cell phones, which meant we had pretty good Race Owl data for pretty much everyone. So we're pretty lucky that way. As long as you can keep your phone charged and dry, it should be pretty well connected. I don't know, John, do you have anything to add?
No, it was the best race I've ever seen as far as cell phone connectivity. So it's perfect for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, great question. You can connect to Race Owl via like a spot device or an inReach, but
Correct.
yeah, but most people did not do that, and most people did not need to do that. Luckily enough. Jim Peckus, anything you want to say about your race experience?
I want to say it's a really fun race. If anybody's considering doing it, I would highly recommend signing up for it. I had a lot of fun with it. I would also highly recommend scouting the portages before the race. When we went up there, we literally walked every portage before the race. So that was a good thing. We hit We ended up hitting Sauk Rapids at night, the second half of the rapids at night, and I was hoping we didn't hit a rock when we went through there at night because we couldn't really see very well. So luckily we got through there just fine. The Blanchard Dam was an interesting experience. I remember putting in and the sirens are going off on the dams, saying they're releasing more water or whatever to there's more, opening more gates or whatever on there. There's not already enough water coming through here. So that was a good experience. Yeah, night paddling. That was yeah, that was I don't want to give away all my secrets for the race, but but yeah, it was definitely something worth signing up for. I'm planning on doing some part of the race here at this point. I'm working on figuring out what I'm doing for a partner for this race. And all that. I found out Patrick McCarthy is going to be doing the Texas Water Safari that week. So I'm seeing what my plans are, if I'm doing it solo, if I'm doing it tandem, or what my plans are for that weekend. So I'm figuring that out. But yeah, it was definitely a good experience, and I would definitely practice night paddling. If anybody has not done night paddling in the past, would highly recommend it. And especially if you're not sleeping overnight, because that's what we did. We just pressed through, all overnight, and it just went all the way through. Portaging at 2 a.m. through some of the parks is kind of interesting. So, but yeah, highly recommend it.
Yeah, well, so it's been an hour, so I don't want anybody to feel like they have to stick around. If you have to go, feel free. But I am gonna stay here and answer as many questions as I can for as long as necessary, and we've got some good ones. Andy, I'm gonna probably ask you for your story in a second here, but we do have some questions in the chat I'm gonna attempt to answer. Dan Streaker asked about the Pro Paddler app, if it's any different than the 340 Pro Paddler. John Marble, you can speak to that. I don't think it is. I think it's pretty much the same. Is that right?
It's basically the same. It doesn't have the tracking on it. It's just the navigation. So it's slightly dumbed down, but has all the data in there for the entire Mississippi actually. But works almost exactly the same as Pro Paddler for Missouri.
And I believe the one thing to know about that is I think it's only available on Android devices. Is that correct?
It is for now. There is the iOS version. The issue with that on this particular race is just the amount of data that the Mississippi has. So I've got to do something slightly different to make that work. But we'll see. It might be ready by then.
Okay, but for now, Android is a good option.
Yep.
Somebody else asked if you're using a spot, is there a time interval for tracking for Race Owl that is preferred?
No, I think the default for spot or inReach is 10 minutes. That's fine. A lot of people like to do 5 minutes just because it's a little bit quicker pace and gives you faster updates, but it'll work either way.
Great. Brandon asked if there's sandbars. I'm going to say no. I have seen sandbars when the water gets low in late July or August, but I haven't seen them in May or June. So I would say very doubtful. Not impossible, but very doubtful. In terms of strainers, not really an issue. The river's big enough that the trees aren't going to mess with you much. That being said, when it braids through islands, like in the Beaver Islands, there could be some strainers, and there's certainly some rocks and riffles, and there's many places where there's class 1 rapids or low or less than that, just riffles. And there are places where there's little rock fields. So we've had people ask, can I bring my understern rudder? All I can say is that there are lots of people who are perfectly comfortable doing this stretch with their understern rudder, and there's plenty of people that are not. So it's really a judgment call. But the possibility of riding up on a rock and flipping over is real. It's really there. That's, to me, that's besides a bridge pylon, you got to watch out for those, but just some little rock in the river in one of the riffly areas or in some of the island fields is the biggest threat to tip your canoe over, in my opinion. And
I will say, I agree with Scott that the water level is likely never to be that low for our races in June. But there is a stretch just above the upstream of the Clearwater Bridge that they actually drive their vehicles across the river on when in low water. So if the water is ever extremely low, that would be one spot potentially for sandbars.
Right. I don't think it's ever been that low in early June, but
I don't think so either.
Yeah. And then in terms of dense fog, that's always a possibility. This river is not in a valley, and it's not It's not big enough really to create its own fog very often. So I don't think fog is very common, but of course it's possible. Chris is asking about the bugs. Great question. Please, anybody feel free to chime in. In my experience, they're not bad at all on the river, but they can definitely be an issue on the portages. So having a bug shirt or bug spray is not a bad idea, especially for your ground crew, and especially like at Blanchard Dam, you're going through the woods there. So bugs is certainly possible. I don't know if anybody else can speak to that. Brooke says they were really bad at the Blanchard Dam. Yeah.
I'll second that. They were pretty bad at Blanchard.
The day
Yeah.
before when we practiced at Blanchard Dam, we were not prepared for it. They were so bad that we dropped the boat and just ran out of the woods, getting in the car, looking like crazy people, slapping ourselves, and then went back in fully prepared. They're bad there. It was funny though. Made a good story.
Yeah.
Keeps you moving though.
Chris is also asking about, she says, first time marathoner here, specific nutrition recommendations from the veteran paddlers. I will let other people chime in on that, except that I will say the one thing is you are going to burn, I mean, potentially between 6,000 and 10,000 calories a day, I think. So that's a lot. So you really can't have too many calories. So whatever you can do to get in between 100 and 200 every hour, whether that's gummies, go to the gas station and get all the worst food from your childhood and enjoy. The other thing is it's always easy to drink your calories. So getting something like Spiz or the Hammer Nutrition powder or these other high calorie powders that mix in, those don't work for everyone. And I recommend trying those before the race to see if your stomach tolerates them. But that is certainly an option, is doing it that way. I know some people go liquid nutrition, do half their nutrition liquid. Some people do it all, which I think is crazy personally. And some people don't do any liquid nutrition. They just eat all their food. So it all depends on what works for you. But again, other people should chime in on that.
Eat what you like. And eat often. So it's going to be different for everybody. I drink my nutrition. It keeps me awake, alert. But I'm going at a lot faster pace than some other people, so that might not work for everybody else. If I was going to go to sleep during this race, I would probably just eat normal food.
Bobby, what do you use to drink?
Infinite.
What is it?
Nutrition. It's called Infinite Nutrition.
Okay.
And it's a special mix they do for me.
Nice.
Just whatever you do, use it for a while, months before the race. Don't change it right before or think, oh, I think this will be great, and try it out while you're racing, because that's really where most people get screwed up.
Yeah, do a couple long training runs and try eating every hour. That's what you really want to eat every hour if you're going to be doing solid foods.
Yeah. Great advice. Somebody asked about takeouts. So I'm going to mention those DNR maps will show you where all the takeouts are. And then Dan, I know you want to know if you can take out not at a ramp. My advice is there's so many ramps, and here's the custom Google map. There's a link on the website. So you can see here, I'm going to zoom way in here. All of the important points are on the map. So there's Lum Park, which is the start. You can get driving directions just by clicking right here and then opening in Google Maps and get driving directions. You can see the lake here, Rice Lake, where it starts. And can everybody see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. So you'll see from Rice Lake, you're going to go out, and then here's the first portage right over here. You go under this bridge and over to the Brainerd Dam. But this year, you're going to actually turn right instead of left, and you're going to go upstream. You can see it's basically a lake. I know that says French Rapids, but it's not a rapids. You're going to go all the way up here, and we'll have a buoy in by Greens Point here, and you'll turn back around. But the DNR will show you all of the ramps, but a lot of them are on here. So for example, after the Brainerd Dam, when you portage that, you go downstream, you've got, I can't remember now, quite a long ways to Little Falls, but you can see right here is Crow Wing State Park ramp at mile 126. Whereas the Brainerd Dam is I guess I don't have my mileage there. Anyways, this map.
But there's a lot of there's a lot more boat ramps between the dam and Crow Wing too. I mean, they're just literally every few miles along the stretch of the river.
But if you need to stop somewhere not a boat ramp, then that could be trickier because there may not be any way for anybody to get to you. If you need to pull over just for a little break for yourself, in some places that's going to be easier than others. It just depends on what the river shore looks like in that section.
Brandon asks, do the bridges have marked spans to pass through? Are there sections that do or don't have safety boats?
Okay, really, really great question. We are unlikely to have a safety boat until you get to the last 60 miles below the St. Cloud Dam. However, we will have a chase kayak or canoe at the end of the race coming through. That'll be like the sweep boat. So nobody's going to be getting behind that, and they'll be able to help you if you're at the back of the pack or if you're having a problem. The bridges are not necessarily marked, but there's always street lights on top of them, and maybe you can. I don't want to say you can always see them. That's probably too strong of a statement. So you do need to be a little careful around the bridges. That's a time you might want to use your spotlight or your flashlight. But I don't know, what did people think last year? Did people have any problems with the bridge pylons?
No.
I don't think
I
they
see
were
lots
ever
of
an
head
issue.
shaking now.
I'd recommend just making sure you have a nice high-powered spotlight, test it out, night paddling sometime prior to the race. I don't recall ever having an issue seeing the pylons at all.
Yeah, but that is a good idea, just to make sure your spotlight is powerful enough so that if you're not sure, you can use that to see. Andy, you did the race last year. Anything you want to chime in with here?
No, I think I'll echo what Jim and everyone else said. I think it was very well organized. Again, if you're unfamiliar with night paddling, definitely try it out beforehand. It can be unnerving. And not just getting out and paddling at night, but also doing things in your boat, like eating or, relieving yourself or whatever at night. It can be a little trickier when your vision's a little bit lower, and stuff like that can kind of compound, like psychologically fatigue you. So yeah, I would recommend to anyone who hasn't done it, do some night paddling, like a good long paddle sometime at night. Be nice to your ground crew, even when you get grumpy. So I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that, Andy, that just so everybody, just to say it, start training now, work out now, do any kind of exercise you can, paddle as much as you can.
Yeah.
However, be very careful with spring paddling because cold water kills, and it's very easy, very, very, very easy to get lackadaisical and just think I'll be fine and not realize, it can warm up the air temperature pretty fast in the spring, and you go out on a 60-degree day, but the water might still be 35, 40 degrees. And it's really, I can't emphasize enough how careful you have to be with spring paddling, staying close to shore, for sure wearing a life jacket, bringing extra clothes in a dry bag. These are all strategies. Going with somebody else. These are all things to help prevent. But especially in Minnesota, we have people that unfortunately make fatal mistakes every year. So we can't emphasize enough how important it is to be very careful with. And Brad up there in Winnipeg, I'm sure it happens up there too. So just I think yes, start training now and be very careful. But if you can't, the more you can get on a lake or a river and paddle, the better. Yeah, Brad, nice to see you on. We have our Winnipeg friend here, one of our stand-up paddleboard guys. Anything you want to add from your experience about the race?
I'll echo what everyone said. It was a great event. I think it was one of the first events I did with portaging, which adds a nice different element to these types of races. So that was kind of cool. Gives you a bit for those who are sitting down, it gives you the opportunity to get up and stretch your legs a little. But no, it was cool. And I think the best thing about this one for me is it's a short drive. Usually I'm driving 2-3 days to attend these races. So having something I can get to in 6-7 hours is pretty sweet.
Yeah, and we'll put a shout out for the Red River Paddle Challenge that Brad
Nice.
organizes. If anybody wants to have an incredible experience paddling on the Red River of the North up in Manitoba, incredible experience to cross the border and go up to Canada and get to experience the beautiful north flowing Red River. That happens. When is that? Is that in August or September?
No, we do that. It's the third week in September.
And what's the distance again?
In miles or kilometers? In miles, it's 27 miles. And new this year, we're doing a different event this year. It's our sort of our 5th year anniversary. We're doing a 2-day stage race. So paddlers will do one stage the first day. How many miles is it? Oh, like 35 or something. Day one, and then you got to get up early morning and do the regular Red River Paddle Challenge with everyone else. So it's like 2 races in one.
Very cool.
If you Google Red River Paddle Challenge, that'll come up, right? I think so.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It'll come up. We got some little videos on there if you want to check it out, see what it's all about, and shoot us an email if you're interested and want to come up. We can make it happen.
Awesome. Am I missing any other people that paddled last year, or anybody else who has questions? Feel free to unmute and ask questions or type in the chat. I will say, feel free to send us questions at info@twopaddles.org anytime. We're happy to answer questions. Yeah, like I said, this is Todd and I's kind of passion project. So we're just so excited to be part of the community and to see the community growing. And it is, in my opinion, there's nothing like getting lost in the world of the river for, even if it's 2 hours, it's magical, but especially when it gets to be 20, 30, 40, 50 hours, it's really it's a wonderful different world to get absorbed into for some amount of time.
When is the pre-race meeting, like safety get together or whatever?
Great question. It's right before the event in Lum Park. So I can't remember if we said it's at 1 o'clock or 12:30. I'll look that up, but it's right on that same day. I'm looking it up now. I do recommend going thoroughly through the paddler's guide and the rules on the webpage because it is chock full of information.
I'm looking too. I can't find it, but I'm pretty sure it's like one. We can make a post about it on Facebook to make sure everybody knows.
And the other question I had for hydration is for fluids, how much do people usually carry with them, for stretches? It looks like the longest stretch, if, people go from that last 60, I probably carry, like 4 to 6 liters, depending on the heat.
I mean, it all depends on how often you can get resupplied if you have a support crew. That makes it a lot easier. I think the longest between portages you've got is, I can't remember now, 30 miles or something. So, it depends a lot on whether you can get resupplied at the portage. But yeah, people who did the race last year want to chime in?
I'd add to that, as you're training, pay attention to how much fluids you're consuming. For myself, at a temperature, mid 70s or something like that, I usually consume about a half liter an hour. So that's usually what I plan around. If the temperature goes up 10 degrees, I'm drinking more, obviously. And then give yourself a little bit of a buffer, add a liter to whatever your expectation is.
Got it.
Super helpful, Andy. Thank you. And what else was I going to say about that?
I got another tip about water and stuff like that. Don't carry all your water that you need with you. That's a good thing for the ground crew to take with you to resupply. Have the ground crew meet you at the portages, and have them swap out water at that point. That don't carry it. It'll be way too heavy if you carry it all with you.
I think most people probably know this, but it's always a good idea just to literally monitor the color of your urine, and it should be, pretty translucent. As it gets darker, that's a sign you're not drinking enough. Ideally, it just never gets darker. You start with a bladder full of liquid, and you keep drinking throughout the whole race, and so your urine stays pretty clear the whole time. Is a good way, with just a little bit of color. If it starts getting dark, that's a sign that you've let the tank get too low.
I say on the 340, we usually take like day clothes and night clothes, because you get gross and it gets cold. I don't know if people change clothes during the event.
I did. I swapped out. I think, well, with the late start, 5 p.m. start last year, I started off with a short sleeve t-shirt because I knew the sun wouldn't be much of an issue for the first 15 hours of the race. So then as night fell, I think at that second portage, I swapped out for a long sleeve t-shirt with a neck gaiter to kind of keep my neck warm. And that seemed to be great for what I can't remember what the temperature was, probably low, like high 60s or something like that in the evening. But again, it's kind of you learn a lot about yourself while you're training. So yeah, I guess paddle in all sorts of different conditions. You'll know what temperatures you tolerate. I tend to overheat a lot, so I usually go on the lighter side.
I was gonna also ask, I've done South Dakota races too, and I know South Dakota wind sucks, but I didn't know if it was a thing in Minnesota too.
It certainly can be. It's unlikely to be as, I think it's more often a problem in South Dakota, from my own experience. It's not to say it can't be an issue on the Mississippi. In my experience, if it's going to be an issue, it's going to more usually be on the pools where there's no current above the dams, especially like the last 7 miles of the race above Coon Rapids Dam. I've experienced high winds there, and it wasn't real fun. But um, so could it happen? Absolutely. Is it very common? No, not super common to have a real issue there. I just wanted to say too, the average low, overnight low in early June for this stretch of river is in the low 50s, and the average daytime high is in the 70s. So pretty nice, but it can get as low as in the 30s, and it can get as high as in the 90s. So you really just want to bring a lot of layers and then carry some options with you in the boat, and then maybe even have more options with your support crew. One of my favorite pieces of gear is a good winter hat, because it's just a lot of bang for its buck. It doesn't take up much room, but you get a lot of warmth on it, and it's easy to take on and easy to take off.
If you feel yourself even starting to get cold, you better go lay on. If you feel yourself starting to overheat, you better take it off. Address issues quickly. Don't do not wait, because it can get worse. Anytime you're taking that many calories out of your body, funny things can happen quickly. I've had hypothermia in Florida in Asia. I just been paddling all day long, and I stop. It's usually when you stop, like when you get out to use portages or use the bathroom, that's when cold sets in rapidly. So just always make sure you have clothes on, and when you have issues, that goes for hands too, blisters, cuts, anything. Make sure you take care of it the moment you start to feel it. A great thing to do before these races, just get some aquaphor and apply it on your hands the week before the race, every night before you sleep. It softens your hand up real nice, and it prevents blisters.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Bobby. I mean, most people, if they don't finish, it's not because they weren't strong enough. It was because they screwed up on their nutrition or their hydration or their hands, or they got sunburnt. There was something going wrong with their layers. Just like Bobby's saying, something was going wrong, and they just tried to push through it instead of dealing with it right away before it became a big problem.
Yeah, and once it becomes a problem, I mean, on all the races we do, and everybody you hear that quits, they didn't have to quit. They chose to quit. They let that problem be their excuse to get off the river. or get out the golf next to where we're at. And you take care of yourself and know no matter how much pain you're going through, no matter how many problems you're having, everybody else is going through the same thing, or they're dealing with it. So you need to deal with it. Either take some time or get back on the river and keep on going. You can't finish. It's just one stroke at a time. If you do that, doesn't matter how many you do, you will get there. So don't quit. Quit. You live with quitting. Quitting is awful. And then you don't get to experience what everybody that finished experienced. Everybody's different, but it's always wonderful.
Yeah, and I can't emphasize enough too. It's always an option to, if you're really bonking, take a break, take 5 minutes, take a half an hour, take an hour if you have to. Even if you feel like you have to quit, usually you might take a break for 3 hours, and you probably have enough time to get back on the river. Last time somebody felt like quitting, like I said, and they left for like 10 or 12 hours, but they still were able to come back and finish on time. So.
Yeah, the first long distance event I ever did was the Everglades Challenge. It's 300 miles. And it's saltwater. Saltwater is just evil on the skin. If you get blisters or cuts. Anyways, the second checkpoint is 170 miles into the Everglades. And I felt like I couldn't move anymore. My lips were falling off because they were so sunburned because I lost my chapstick that had the SPF on it. And when I got to Everglades City, which is a tourist attraction on there, I walked into the store and if anybody wanted my kayak, I would have given it to them. I mean, I was finished. But I got some chapstick and I drank a Mountain Dew. And 10 minutes later, I felt like a million bucks. And that can be the thing. If you just get something to drink, address the problem, take a minute. It's amazing. You can come back to life real fast.
Yeah, Bobby's got stories all day from a million different races, amazing stories. But unfortunately, we have to wrap this up. Thank you all so much for joining us, especially everybody who did the races last year. And thank you to all the new folks who are thinking about doing it this year. And I know I saw Alan Witebski on here who did, I don't even remember which race you did last year, Alan, but it's just fun to see everybody that's part of this growing community. And there's so many cool races in Winnipeg and in Florida and all over the place. So thank you so much. And again, if anybody has more questions, feel free to email us at info@2paddles. And like Dan says, we'll see you on the river.